Good morning, everybody. Paul here, coming at you with a Crypto Coffee update where we talk about the news, events, conferences, and everything else pertaining to the crypto space for the next few days to help keep you guys in the loop. But before we get into any of that, join me please for a simultaneous sip, which is our ceremonious sip of coffee, in this case, tea or water, basically whatever you have on hand or feel is appropriate to get this episode started right in solidarity and productivity. So, join me. Delicious. All right, let's go ahead and examine what we have on the agenda today, which first and foremost is the Cryptide website. We've been starting off right with this, just giving you a quick rundown of what we have available over at cryptide.cc. Click on videos, and of course you have all of the Crypto Coffee updates and more. For news, we have all of the news articles we discuss here and even more, so if you're at the office or have a lot going on that day, you too can stay up to date with short snippets of information, and of course, click the title to go to the actual article, because citing your sources is important. Next up, we have the blog section where we have next week's crypto, where we talk about what's going on in the week to come so you can stay up to date about what's going on in your region and perhaps even in your local area, and you can attend these conferences if you so choose. So let's go ahead and move on to the actual meat of the matter for the day. One of the biggest stories being South Korean exchanges joining together to help combat wash trading and fake volume, specifically money laundering. These are some big name exchanges, and if you remember in the last Crypto Coffee update, we talked about a South Korean exchange that was busted for wash trading and a huge fine ensued. So, taking a look, it looks like it's going to be Corbit, Upbit, BitHum, and Coin1. Now, interestingly enough, a couple of these names jumped out at me as exchanges that aren't particularly, I guess you could say, reputable in terms of their volume figures. Now, I'm not trying to insinuate that some of these exchanges are for sure engaging in wash trading. However, this is definitely a step perhaps in the right direction to help dissuade any individuals within the exchanges themselves from undergoing such activity. However, taking it into account that if these exchanges are indeed engaging in such activity, what better way to throw authorities off the case or perhaps even set a precedent as to how exchange volume is handled than by creating a basically group or a confederation that tracks exchange volume so you can get a handle on it and feed what information you want to the authorities. After all, here's a interesting component from CoinMarketCap that talks about the reported volume. Well, this is the actual volume. You can see here Binance has verifiable volume. They're pretty transparent about what they have going on, and they can confirm that there's $784 million roughly being traded on Binance in the last 24 hours and $1.5 billion in the last week alone. However, there's another section, and you can get this area by clicking rankings. Here we're looking at the adjusted volume. Now, the reported volume shows something particularly interesting, which you can see here. BitMEX being a futures exchange contract kind of platform, this is an actual Bitcoin being traded back and forth, so it's reasonable that that information would be omitted. However, look here, we have BitHum with $1.3 billion, so almost a little under twice that of Binance's volume, all coming out of the Korean markets. And just look in the last 7 days, this has been pretty sustainable. So while it's probably not hitting 1.3 billion per day, 4.1 billion in the last 7 days alone, more than double that of Binance's volume. So truly, either Korea is so crypto hungry it's out of this world, or something strange is going on with BitHum's volume. This is also something that has been corroborated by CER, or Crypto Exchange Rankings, powered by Hackin, and they did an A/B testing and a lot of other statistical analysis to ascertain whether or not BitHum's volume was legitimate, or maybe there was some strange statistical anomalies kind of cropping out, perhaps suggesting that BitHum may be engaging in some kind of wash trading, or just essentially cooking the order books to make it seem as though it has more liquidity and thicker order books than it actually has in actuality. And you can read this for yourself. We're not going to go and beat a dead horse and look at this huge article, but it's really fantastic statistical analysis. They do some really great breakdowns of the volumes of the order books to get an idea as to whether or not BitHum is indeed doing this kind of nefarious activity, and it's left a bit open-ended, but suffice to say that the figures that CER comes up with isn't damning, but definitely does not paint a rosy picture for BitHum. If BitHum isn't aware of this activity going on, that may be perhaps negligence on the part of BitHum relative to users, that users may be using their platform for such activities, or even worse, if BitHum is indeed involved in some of these potential activities where wash trading is occurring, that's definitely not going to look good, and it definitely calls this specific development into question. Now again, not insinuating that any of this is ironclad and that these exchanges shouldn't be used whatsoever. It's always about doing your own research and figuring out what the best fit is for you. But again, these are South Korean exchanges. I don't think a lot of the audience here at Cryptide is South Korean or based in South Korea, but if you are and you have more information about this subject, I'd love to touch base because this kind of thing is just fascinating. There is something called the kimchi premium, which was a huge factor in last year's 2017 bull run, where we saw Korean prices locally decouple from the rest of the global market. So Ripple, for instance, was selling at I believe it was 25 to 40% premium in some places in South Korea. So there's definitely some factors at play that could cause this disparity in volume and in price activity. However, when you have statistical analysis such as this, perhaps it suggests something else is going on entirely. Just for the sake of brevity, we'll just kind of blow this up here. Here's the transaction size. You can see the transaction size distribution is really skewed. Incredibly intensive trading activity, which lasted only 5 minutes of the day. So definitely not normal activity per se. But as said, we won't beat a dead horse with this. We'll just kind of leave this for your perusement in the sources below, because again, citing sources, super critical. So next up we have NASDAQ. I feel like I'm in deja vu a lot of the time. NASDAQ has been doing so much with blockchain recently. I feel like there's an article about them, if not every week, at least every month. So a bit of deja vu here, but nonetheless, they're doing this again. They're further steeping their toes, I guess their whole foot now, into the world of crypto and blockchain, working with a company called Symbiont.io. Symbiont, I think. Symbiont sounds better. I was trying to figure out how to pronounce that before the episode here. But they had a 20 million Series B funding round. Essentially, they're working with investors such as Mike Novogratz with Galaxy Digital, Citi, Raptor Group, huge names, etc. Essentially working on rolling out a institutional consortium of services for blockchain implementations and business needs. This is something that, what better organization than NASDAQ, an existing huge financial entity, to deliver these kind of services, because they already know. They've been working with these clients for long amounts of time, much longer than many individuals have been in the crypto space, and longer than the crypto space has been around, frankly. So given that fact, it does make sense that NASDAQ would have more connections, not only to the world of technology, but in the world of finance, to roll out these implementations for the benefit of everybody. After all, you can see that blockchain on AWS, close that out here, this is something we talked about a few months ago, where Amazon launched their own blockchain services, specifically with Hyperledger. They're using that, and then eventually they're going to roll out with the Ethereum implementation as well, so you can build things on the Ethereum network via Amazon. So again, really interesting stuff. Shows that this isn't going away, and you have these huge institutions such as the Intercontinental Exchange and Bakkt, such as NASDAQ, such as Amazon, keeping an eye on this kind of technology. We talk a lot about relative centralization and to what degree centralization may impact the efficacy of this kind of technology to make large amounts of impact and decentralized power structures and that sort of thing. However, really at the end of the day, it's just technology, and it does what you tell it to do. So the fact that you have these huge burgeoning financial institutions looking to kind of jump into the 21st century, and as per the tweet, actually said rewrite tomorrow, to help to change the narrative of how history is shaping to be more beneficial, not only in terms of finance, but for everybody involved. It's a pretty exciting time, frankly. All right, so speaking of large entities and large cities, here's a large city in New York, and what can they do? They can now buy Bitcoin via a traditional ATM, and this is pretty cool. Essentially, there's something called a bit license. New York State is a bit different than other U.S. states. They actually drove Kraken out of the state a few years ago due to just difficulty in doing business in the state of New York. However, if any entity or individual is willing to tread through the arduous regulations and get all of the permissions needed to do business in certain ways, then it can be a huge lucrative market, and that's exactly what seems to have occurred with these two entities here, Liberty X, and also I believe it was, where's the other guy? It escapes me now. I think it was, I'll find it here momentarily, but essentially, yes, you can, oh, it was Robinhood, that was it. I wouldn't say Robinhood, no, that wasn't right. So Robinhood, that huge crypto management fund kind of thing that we were talking about, essentially it's like an exchange. They also have something that's like a bank account, but not a bank account, so you can actually put in capital, fiat, and purchase cryptocurrencies. So they've finagled themselves into a really unique position where there's a lot of accessibility while still maintaining regulatory compliance. So cheers to Robinhood there. But this is the actual New York State Department press release. It's something that wasn't cited in the Daily Hodl article, so got to point out when sources are cited and good journalism and all that. You know what we're about here at Cryptide. So I wanted to call that out. Not really that huge of a deal. I mean, anything can happen in the excitement of the moment. After all, this is pretty huge news, but nonetheless, try to get those sources cited. And it is indeed confirmed. You have the Robinhood Markets Incorporated, this guy Vlad Tenvin, who's the co-founder and co-CEO, along with LibertyX. They received what's called the Bit license for operation, meaning that they can now use the existing Bitcoin ATMs to sell Bitcoin for fiat currencies to these entities and individuals in New York City. So pretty cool, fantastic stuff. Really happy for New Yorkers there. All the Bitcoiners in New York are no doubt celebrating. And let's hop across the pond here over to Italy, and they've passed their first blockchain regulation. It's been said that Italy is kind of a sleepy state, not much happening per se in terms of regulation. Things move slow. Maybe it's an afternoon nap kind of thing. But in 2019, Italy has woken up and they have passed some regulations. It still has to go to the Senate of the Republic, as per the article, for finalization. However, it's good to see Italy starting to jump into the fray. They did work with Malta late last year, to establish essentially a memorandum of interest about blockchain technology. And again, Malta is the blockchain island, so that kind of makes sense. Good to see Italy jumping on board. Nothing too gigantic with this article per se, really just kind of breaking the news that, hey, Italy is indeed passing blockchain regulation, defining these digital assets, what a blockchain is, what a smart contract is, and kind of setting these early precedents as to how to best handle this technology. So interesting stuff. Now moving away from the state actors into the more technical side of things, local Bitcoins has been compromised, and this is kind of an interesting subject due to the fact that local Bitcoins does not actually maintain any wallets. It is simply a peer-to-peer over-the-counter exchange that hooks you up with somebody who is either selling Bitcoin, or if you are selling, wants to buy your Bitcoin. However, it was a phishing issue, and the P2P crypto exchange was indeed targeted, and you could see about $28,600 worth of assumingly Bitcoin or fiat was stolen. So that's no good. This is something I wanted to bring up to just help to drive home how important it is to do your own research. Don't click any nefarious links. Always double check those links before you click them. Back in 2017, with the Voracious bull run that we saw, there was all kinds of scams going around. One of them was, if you know Binance, it's Binance, so you go there, no problem. However, someone took the I in Binance and switched the character to, instead of being an I, it was the European version with the umlauts, the two dots over top, and it was so difficult to discern that was a different URL. However, if you go there, you enter your login information, you would be phished and in turn lose your account. Never good stuff happening there. And again, these centralized servers, these centralized exchanges, they can do their best to help you. However, at the end of the day, this is still the new wild, wild west. So it's not guaranteed. So that's why I wanted to drive home how important it is to just stay extra vigilant. It's easy to slip into a sense of complacency to some degree when working with these kind of things. You do it all the time. You do it every day. However, complacency really is the anathema of security, since you begin to slowly but surely slip on protocol that could ultimately save you a lot of time and a lot of headache. So things like that, things like backing up your private keys, etc., back up your Google two-factor authentication, that sort of thing. But circling back to the meat of the matter, Local Bitcoins was able to get this situated. They were able to stop the phishing attempt. It seems only 5 to 6 individuals were affected, so really sucks for them. Hopefully they can get some kind of restitution to help to ease the burden. But forums were temporarily shut down. I believe they're now back online as per recording time, but that could still be tentative as well. So interesting stuff there. Definitely be safe out there, guys. Another article to try and drive that home, actually. I brought up two here. CoinCheck owner Monex warns that scammers are indeed impersonating its business. So again, this is kind of goes back to, I can't call it common sense, because again, you can lapse in common sense for just one moment in time, and that can really make all the difference. So it's really just a matter of being vigilant, a matter of maintaining your own security, and just watching out for this kind of stuff. So again, you see Monex Coin Management is being impersonated, so watch out for those kind of emails. Normally these kind of entities won't contact you unless it's something critically important, and if so, always ensure it's the right email. So next up, just to wrap up, something a little bit casual. We kind of have a shorter, more casual episode today. There wasn't a lot of groundbreaking news. You see some just basic stuff, and kind of the main meat of the matter with the South Korea volume thing. I just find that so fascinating. I really think that's going to be the 2019 subject as to whether or not this liquidity in these order books are indeed integrous. Can I say integrous? Is that correct? If they have integrity and they are indeed valid, because that can make some huge difference to institutional investors. After all, if you are a money manager who's wanting to buy $1 million worth of Bitcoin, you need to ensure that those order books can absorb your buy orders. Otherwise, you're not going to get the best deals, and that in turn can lead to some issues and call into question levels of fiduciary responsibility. And now you're getting into the legal implication for the entire labyrinth of existing law, and that's something that people just don't want to open themselves up to by and large, especially with the opaque regulations and the headaches that can entail. So definitely a huge subject there. Now, navigating the FUD and fake news and crypto journalism. This is another thing that we talk about quite regularly, and I thought it was fantastically written. Truly. It actually talks about the paid for without any sponsored content labels. If you guys remember, we talked about that. It goes right back to the Breaker Mag article. Let's scroll down real quick. Yeah, here it is. Here are the outlets that were accepting under the table bribes, essentially, to state that, hey, look at this great article. We really like this project, but it's really a sponsored article. They're not going to tell you that. So these are just some places to watch out for. I know we use BTC Manager over here, but again, this is one of the articles that didn't have a lot of implication per se, maybe for the long term. But it's just kind of an announcement that's occurring. So just, again, kind of using your best judgment, kind of discerning whether or not the article has enough gravity or whether or not it's more of a piece to catch your attention. And this is something that Samantha Yap goes into quite heavily in this article. We're not going to read it word for word and go through the entirety of it. You can see it's a very well written and kind of a hefty piece. Nothing too gigantic, but still, nonetheless, just for the sake of brevity. But yeah, it goes through all of these points as to how to best discern whether or not an article is looking to establish a level of objective credibility with its users, or whether or not it's trying to assert that a certain position or price movement is legitimated, and therefore you should in turn join in on the trend. Since news does a lot of the time, especially in an early market like crypto, influence price action and individual user movements, and in turn individual user movements of course influence news, since that's what they're reporting on, big stories and things like that. So it's kind of a give-take relationship. So when you begin to have unscrupulous journalists try to push the narrative for either under the table pay or for their own interests, that's definitely not journalism proper. And again, I've given shout outs to Crypto Slate before. I really think they do such a fantastic job. All the articles I find on here, spare a handful, are just very well written, very pointed and articulated, and really seek out a level of objectivity that is hard to find anywhere else in the crypto space. I'm in no way affiliated with them. I just like good journalism. I've been doing this for a while now, so I kind of have my sea legs. I kind of got a good balance as to how things should be delivered potentially, and whether or not an article may be unscrupulous. But again, I'm just one guy, and I'm wrong, I'm right, I'm just a human being, and I'm just here to interpret this information and of course give you the sources so you can do the same thing. And I guess with that said, that's about all we have for the day. Of course, everything's going to be below in in the description, guys. Obviously everything is able to be cited, and if you have any fantastic information, let me know. I'm hanging out in the Discord, always available to answer comments and that sort of thing. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Cryptide would not be what it is without you guys, and keep an eye out on us for keep an eye out on us for us. Watch out for us, because we're going to have some exciting things happening throughout Q1 and Q2, beginning of the year, first half, and especially come the latter half of the year. Big things in the works. Can't say much more, but excited about it. So my name is Paul, signing off. Thanks again, guys. We are Cryptide, and remember, the tide is rising, as is the functionality of Cryptide. Exciting.